So I gotta say, this might be the very first Why the Hell Am I Here episode where after almost an hour of talking and ending the episode, my guest actually said, wait, we wanted to talk about more things, which is a good thing, I suppose. So I guess we're gonna have to have a part 2 episode where we invite Dave Damron and Jon Pierce back from DRM to talk more about their lives, because this episode got really deep into what DRM is all about, what the letters DRM stand for, because they actually stand for something. Did you guys know that? Because I didn't. And what's next for the future of DRM Productions? For those of you who don't know, they're a video production and multimedia production company right here in Mansfield and doing really cool things. And like I said, they're going through a big transition period right now. Some new ownership stepping up, others stepping away, wondering what is coming next in their lives, navigating that kind of anxiety of what comes next in my life when I'm stepping away from the company I helped to create, and then also the excitement of what am I going to do with this business I now own. So for anyone who's ever gone through those kind of emotions, this is the podcast for you. And for those of you who have ever wondered more about DRM, stay tuned. Now, before we dive into our actual interview, I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to one of the generous newsroom partners supporting the Why the Hell Am I Here podcast, Spherion Staffing. Their job is finding jobs, and they love what they do, which is something we both have in common. Without the support of Spherion, the solutions journalism work we do at Richland Source, including this podcast, just wouldn't be possible. For more information about Spherion, our newsroom partners, and our solutions journalism work, visit richlandsource.com/solutions. From the Richland Source Podcast Network, welcome to Why the Hell Am I Here? A podcast that hopes to answer the big and small questions about where you are in life, where you've been, and where you're going. I'm your host, Brittany Schock. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Why the Hell Am I Here? We are making good use of our podcast studio's dual microphones with another pair of interviewers with us today in the studio. We have Dave Damron and Jon Pierce, both of DRM here in Mansfield. So welcome guys to the podcast.
Hi Brittany, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope you guys are super excited and not nervous at all, but I feel like maybe you are a little bit.
Totally. I've been cramming, so Here we go.
And I have done nothing to get ready, so it's just going to be off the cuff.
Which is perfect to our personality. So.
Exactly, right? So it's going to be great. So these guys are in the studio today because we have not a little bit, we have a lot of changes coming up at DRM, correct? With some people going part-time, as you call it, and other people stepping up. So do you guys want to tell everybody what exactly is going on over there?
Well, I started the business 35 years ago, so maybe it's not quite that long, somewhere in there. And I'm hitting 65 in December, and my wife wants to travel some, so we're going to go into a part-time situation at the office.
And what does that mean for you, Jon?
So that means I'm starting to learn a lot of what Dave's doing and starting to take over some of those responsibilities and that kind of thing. So it's a time of transition, but it's good. It's good.
All good things, right?
So I'm going to try to stick around half-time to keep him in line.
Are you one of those people, too, who's like, I can't imagine not working? Or are you really looking forward to not working at all?
No, I'm struggling with this. Just... I'm going to have a hard time imagining letting go of the business, not seeing all the people that I see on a regular basis.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
You guys are pretty tight-knit over there, aren't you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys have the dogs there. It's basically like a family in a home over there. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. We've had a lot of, this is totally going down a different road, but we've had a lot of student tours come through, and we get thank you notes that the teachers make them write, and we get like 30 thank you notes from these grade school or middle school kids, and they say the two things that they mention They don't mention all the stuff that we do or the equipment that's there. They mention the dog, or they mention the Lego room, which is our graphic team's. There is so much Lego in there.
Highly curated museum.
Right.
Yeah.
I hate to think how much money's in that museum. Oh my.
So
we may have looked into our insurance on that.
So they're really getting a lot out of that tour, is what you're saying. Learning a lot of what it's really about over there.
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to learn about what it's really about over there throughout the course of this podcast. Listeners know that it's all about, talking about people's journeys through life, and, what better time to look back and see where you started and where you came than towards retirement, right? / being part-time, because we're not calling it retirement, right? So we're going to start with Dave here because, as you mentioned, you started DRM in 1984. So we're going to look at how exactly you came to do that. So
how the hell did I get here? Is that
exactly. Yes. Look at you. So Dave, you're from Mansfield originally, and from generations back. All Mansfielders. You said your grandpa and, whole family is from Mansfield, right?
Yes. My grandfather was here. My dad was born and raised here. They were both physicians. Back in the day, I remember making house calls with my dad. I'd sit in the car
Really?
while he'd go in with his little medical bag and wait for him to come back out. That medical bag actually turned into our sound bag.
Really?
Many years later, it was up in the attic. I said, this would be a perfect sound bag for all the connectors and mics that we needed. So
wow, that's pretty cool. But no interest in becoming a doctor yourself, huh?
Well, I think I thought about it for about one biology class, and then I said, I don't think I want to do this. But I remember many years growing up that I spent working with my dad in the photo darkroom to learn. He was showing me how you print pictures and do them in black and white and dodge and all the things you do in a darkroom to get a good print. And I think that's where I got my first love for photography or video or the image gathering process.
Yeah. Dark rooms are not something we do anymore, though, right?
Actually, they do still have classes for kids to learn the basics of photography.
Yeah.
But we don't spend any time in a dark room. No.
I'm just thinking about you talking about the tools that you use, and I'm like, well, I know what those are in Photoshop. I think they use the same names, but...
Yes, they did. A lot of them. That's true.
So, got your first love of photography back then in the dark room with your dad, age 6 or 7. Do you remember doing any kind of photography or stuff, experimenting with it while you were a kid?
Oh, yeah. I remember. Yeah, when I was really young, I'd get out a sheet of photo paper and I'd lay everything I could think of on the top of that photo paper. It could be a scissors or it could be a paper clip or whatever. And you'd flash the light and then you'd throw it in the developer and watch the shadows of the images you had there appear. That was really cool. But then as we went along, my dad would do family photos or something, and then we ended up printing 200 of them. So we'd been in the darkroom running all these through, and he'd send them out as our Christmas cards.
Yeah.
So, we spent a lot of time in the darkroom.
What do you think draws someone to be a photographer or videographer? Something in the visual arts as opposed to, being a doctor, for example?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just love taking images and seeing how you can put things in the foreground or in the background or throwing it out of focus, seeing it different than the eye does, but just looking at an image different. I don't know that I would have had the same desire if I hadn't grown up around it more. I might have ended up going down a different path.
The reason I bring this up about your such fascination with it is because you ended up majoring in mathematics at the College of Worcester, and I really need to know why. How did that happen?
Oh my goodness. Well, I made the decision to stay close to home, and Worcester was a good option. And when I got there, I found out that every major, this is awful to say, every major required a thesis paper done your senior year. And at the time, I hated writing. Now I have to write scripts and all that stuff. But at the time, I said, "Oh, I can't write a 200-page thesis. How in the heck am I ever going to do that?" And the only major that didn't require that was math. And I had a math teacher in high school that I just loved, and he wanted me to go and learn math, teach math. But I really didn't want to become a teacher, even though I enjoyed the summers off. But so I majored in math and made it through, but I had a minor in photography.
I was going to say, at least you minored in it. At least.
Well, as much as you could do as a minor at Worcester. But
see, on the flip side, I really enjoyed majoring in journalism because you didn't have to do any math. So I took like one basic math class and then I was done. So
you couldn't ask me to repeat anything that I learned in math. I haven't addressed any of it, haven't used any of it. The only thing I use is addition and subtraction in the books for DRM.
And we pull out Siri half the time for that now.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Siri, what's 17
You got a calculator
times?
in your pocket. Come on. Yeah, don't listen to this kid. Stay in school.
remember-
Math is important.
I remember going to Worcester, and my parents gave me a SR-10 Texas Instrument calculator. That was where they were crazy expensive, but I went to school with it, and the school had never seen anything like that. They couldn't even decide whether you were going to be allowed to use it in the classroom. That's how old I am.
Oh gosh. So Dave, after you graduated from college, you ended up working in a couple of different ways. First of all, you mentioned that you built houses while you were in school. Is that right?
Yes. Actually, that was the math teacher I got to know. He was during the summers that they would build a home, and
Wow.
I got to know him well enough that he hired me to help him, and I did the electrical work and a lot of the framing.
Man,
so I did all the.
You're a man of many talents.
Yeah.
Math, construction, photography.
How those all mesh, I'll never figure out. But we did use my talents to wire the building when we build it. Where we are, so.
Well, there we go. But then you also worked. You said building like cell phone, like radio towers? Or no, I'm sorry. You built radio towers because it was in the time before cell phones, correct?
That's right. I worked, WVNO had a division that sold two-way radios for businesses to communicate to their staff that were out in the field. It was before cell phones, so they would put a tower up at their place of business that could maybe go 15 miles for communication. And my mom was nuts because she just hated me climbing these towers. But we'd put up 100, 150-foot towers, and I'd pull one section up, put it on top, and go higher. And, I don't think I could even begin to get up there anymore. But
I don't think you could pay me to do that. I don't think there's enough money. I'm afraid of heights. So I don't even want to think about like what you might have experienced climbing up there.
There was a funny story. There's a jib pole that you use to pull a section up. So you hook the jib pole on, then you pull the next section up and pull it and put it in place. That jib pole's about 10 feet long or so. I remember being done at the end of a day, and I was exhausted, and the company had a van that we put all the gear in, but the pole barely fit in the van. It fit from the windshield to the back door. When I got done that day, I put the jib pole in, and I slammed the back door closed, and it hit the jib pole and went right through the front windshield. And I went, oh, oh.
Yeah. Oh, man. And which just made it even worse, right?
That's right. I had to go back and tell the boss, I just put the pole through the windshield. There's a nice little dent in it.
Whoops.
And that's cracked the whole thing.
Now, you told me that during this time, you said you were bound and determined to work for TV eventually. Right. Why is that? Why'd you want to get into TV?
Well, my minor was in photography, and they had a video department. Now, that video class I took was only one. We had a camera and some reel-to-reel black and white recorders. And I just thought working for a television station was what I wanted to do. And I remember I went across the state stopping at all these radio or TV stations, and the only one that really let me in the door very far, I got to know the receptionist, and she let me get in to talk to the guy who hired people, and I called them every week and said, do you have a job? Do you have a job? Do you have a job? And finally, in September of, I don't know what that would have been, 77, 78, somewhere in there. I went to work for them, and I worked for the radio station in Akron, or TV station in Akron. It was WAKR 23. It was an ABC affiliate at the time. And I inserted the local TV commercials. I directed the audio for the newscast. Then on weekends, I basically ran the station and directed the newscast. So it was a job. They considered me part-time. It was never full-time. There was a lot of interesting stories during that time of working there.
Yeah.
But I was driving back and forth to Mansfield for probably half of that time. So it was 5 years working for them.
All right. Was college your first exposure to video as opposed to still photography?
Yes. I mean, back in there weren't any video cameras back when we went. It just, it was black and white, and that was pretty much it. And I thought, that's really cool. So.
How do you think TV has changed since you worked in the TV industry?
Well, back when I worked in it, there were basically 3 channels, or ABC, NBC, and CBS. Once in a while, you'd have an independent in there, but that was what you got. So there was a very small market of where you could work. And it's now we've got cable, which allows you to have all these other stations that, that's, even with what's happening with Netflix and streaming, broadcast television is changing its way too. So it's a huge difference.
Now, you moved away from TV a little bit when you started working for in video, but for an insurance company, right?
Yes, I had somebody I knew that was working for Lumberman's Mutual Insurance Company. He was working in their training department, which was just getting into video and photography. We used to do video training series on how to sell a particular insurance product. That was when VHS and Beta just came out, and they could send the tapes out. But my job was more shooting photography and then producing big slideshows. Now somebody goes, a slideshow. Well, we'd have 21 slide projectors that were run by a computer, syncing them up and pulling those slides might go through. In the stack of them, you could go through hundreds of images within a minute.
So this is back when a slideshow was literally a slideshow and not just like PowerPoint.
Yes,
right?
It was. Things were moving on the screen. You could do
these rigs that he ran were insane. I mean, you'd have like 9 projectors all running at once, all in sync and flipping slides out. And
we actually had 21 slide projectors running at once, all hooked up to this computer, which was hooked up to a tape deck that had a soundtrack on it, and then it took the cues from that soundtrack. So I was doing a lot of photography at the time with some video. And then... Yeah,
but it was while you were there that you kind of got the idea for DRM eventually, right?
Well, it was if somebody had told me that I would be running my own business back then, I would have gone, no way. This is not in the cards. But Mike Green, who's a Mansfieldite, and a lot of people know, was working for the cable company at the time. And it was the very beginning when CNN and ESPN and the big networks were allowing local TV commercials to get inserted into their programming. So somebody like Joyce Buick or Whitey's or a pizza place here in town could buy 30 seconds of airtime and actually have it put into CNN, into their time slot on the hour or on the half hour. So it was a local option for Mansfield that had never, ever been able to buy television to start doing it, and he had a lot of customers. But there was nobody in town that could produce those videos. There was no television station. There was no production companies. And Lumberman's was the only place that had any video production at all. So he came to Lumberman's and asked them to do some of the work. So we were doing production work for the cable company because Lumberman's, they weren't using the video department as much as they probably thought they were going to. And so they looked at it. They said, okay, we'll try this for a while. But it wasn't in their business mix. I remember one of the first spots we did, it was a pizza spot, and we had an intern working for us, and we brought in all these boxes of pizza, and she had to look happy eating this pizza. Well, we must have shot it over and over, and she was so sick of eating pizza by the time we were done. I don't think she could eat anymore. That was one of the first spots. But what happened was Lumbermans did not want to be in that business, and I went to Mike Green. I said, if I leave and I buy some gear, would you bring the business to me? I didn't want to see it go away. I didn't want to see it end.
Yeah, you saw potential there, right?
Yeah, at least I saw that I could leave Lumbermans because I thought they were going to die on the vine, which they ended up doing eventually. And I didn't know what I was going to do, so I borrowed some money and bought $7,500, $100,000 worth of gear and started doing all the spots for Mike Green, but then ended up also doing a lot of industrial sales and training. One of the first pieces I did for industrial was for a company. It was part of Tappan, believe it or not, and they made a floating lawnmower, had no wheels.
What?
The fan came down, lifted the mower by pressure of air, and you could mow against, actually it was big for golf courses because they could mow along a lake. There were no wheels. They could mow along the sand traps. So we did one of our first big industrial video sales pieces was for the Flymo.
Flymo.
Wow. Oh, man.
I wonder why that doesn't exist anymore.
So I was working out of my basement.
Yeah.
And I was the only one doing it. And my wife hated it because all these people all day long would be coming in through the house, traipsing down to the basement, which you could barely stand up in. And I built a sound booth for Mike Green to record most of the audio tracks because he was our voice guy. And I glued all this carpet onto the wall to keep the noise down. But the glue that I used smelled so bad. You'd get in there and he'd come out of the booth. I'd swear he was high. He'd say, "Oh, Dave, that's really good in there."
Well, that's so funny because I was going to ask if, you thought that there was a market for that kind of stuff in Mansfield, but it seems like there was since you had people, like you said, in and out constantly looking for you to do some work.
We had a lot of, back in because the companies weren't buying their own gear. I did a lot of work for Gorman Rupp, Tappan. We did a lot of TV commercials. TV commercials was obviously the bigger part.
Yeah, those were the days when you had to buy like $30,000 decks to be able to do anything, real,
true.
not on your computer.
Yeah,
right.
It was, oh my, it's a lot of money. Over the years, it's been a lot of money in gear.
Sure.
And then
it's not cheap to do what you guys do.
No, and then it ends up in the dumpster 10 years later.
Or holding tables up.
Or holding tables up. we have coffee tables with $30,000 tape decks under them.
Stop. Oh my God. So at the time, when did the name DRM then come around?
Well, I was working out in my basement. I was alone for a year, and I could see the writing on the wall. I had to do something. I needed help. And in my mind's eye, I thought the only way to do that was to bring on partners, because I couldn't afford to pay anybody at the time. I'd say, well, we're going to jump into this, and we'll just split what we're going to make. And so Mike Green and Robert Jones came in, and they all said, yeah, we'll come in, and they made a deposit into the business. And we were sitting in the lawyer's office, and we had all these names. We had Sight and Sound Productions, we had Triad Productions, we had, the lawyer kept checking them by calling down to the State Department. There was no internet at the time, so they'd have to call and say, well, is
You're
this
really
name
dating
available?
yourself,
That's
Dave.
right, I am. I'm turning 65. Anyway, so he said, well, how about initials? So David, Robert, Michael became the initials, so DRM Productions, and that's where it started. And that was in 1984.
Yep. And then you said you guys ended up working out of WMFD for a little while in the 90s, but then you built your building that you're currently at by the airport in 2001, right?
Yes. We've been in 3 basic buildings. One was behind the Renaissance Theater at the beginning. Then Gog Meisy came to us and wanted some help getting his TV station on the air, WMFD, and he needed some help that was thinking video-wise because they were coming from the radio side. And we stayed there for 9 years and then ended up building the building out at the airport. And there's 11 people there now. Is that right?
Yep.
10 or 11.
Wow. You guys grew a lot. 10 or 11 people. How many dogs?
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
That's right. We've had
Always
as many
two.
as
We've
4.
had us,
4 or 5.
Four in there.
So built the building by the airport in 2001, gradually started adding more people. Jon ended up coming in 2009. And before we dive into that, I think this is a good time to take a break. So we're going to take a short break, talk about some of the sponsors of Why the Hell Am I Here, thanks to our newsroom partners, and we'll be right back. The solutions journalism work we do at Richland Source, including the Why the Hell Am I Here podcast, would not be possible without the support of our newsroom partners, including PR Machine Works, Nanogate, DRM, the Visiting Nurses Association, Richland Bank, Mechanics Bank, Ohio Health, and the Area Agency on Aging. Seriously, I couldn't be more grateful to our community for believing in what we do here just as hard as we do. For more information about our newsroom partners and our solutions journalism work, visit richlandsource.com/solutions. Now let's get back to the podcast. All right, guys, welcome back to the Why the Hell Am I Here podcast. I am here with Dave Damron and Jon Pierce, both of DRM Productions. So far, we've been talking about Dave and how he's about to go part-time and, take a step back from DRM, which is a company he started back in 1984, and which I never knew, but apparently the D in DRM is for Dave. So little tidbit that I learned something new every day, So, grew the business, and Jon started in 2009, and the big reason why you're here is because you are kind of being passed the torch, right? In terms
that's right.
of the business. So
We're getting ready to start basically buying Dave out on his end of the ownership, and have Jay and I take over on that end, and we're not big on titles, but we decided I tend to be the more organizational guy, so I'm heading to that president role that Dave's filled since the beginning.
So no thoughts of like adding a J into the DRM, right?
JJ, yeah, DRM JJ. It doesn't flow off the tongue quite as well.
Not exactly. Then there's something about brand recognition too.
Some people think of us as, we used to be called Dr. M.
Dr. M, that's right.
DRM, Dr. M. And that actually worked for a couple of years because we were selling Mac computers as a subsidiary of another seller out of Dayton. So
we became Dr. Mac.
Dr. Mac.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, you're learning all kinds of things.
I know, right? Nope. Things I didn't even want to know. No, I'm kidding. No.
Well, that's good.
No, this is great. This is a podcast all about DRM today. It's awesome.
Why the hell am I here?
Exactly. So, Jon, you are a Mansfield native as well. Graduated from Mansfield Christian, and then you went to pronounce the name of your college
Yep,
again.
it was Asbury University.
Asbury. Okay, I'm
college at the time, but yeah.
I was looking at it like it's not Asbury. I know that. Like
Asperger.
Right.
Asperger's? Did you go to Asperger's?
No.
Do you have a
Asbury,
Twitch?
Well, I might now, but no.
And then you majored in media communication.
Yeah,
there.
media communications. Yep,
Yeah.
they have a great program down there in that, and that's what I went there for. And
it's down in Kentucky,
down
right?
in Kentucky, yeah. So right over by the where the horse racing is down there in right around Lexington. So
Okay.
little town called Wilmore, and that's where I was for a couple of years down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually met Jon
Yeah.
because I was working in the video department at Crossroads Community Church, and he came in as a young kid sitting there, and I don't know why he
I was like 13 or
Yeah.
so. Just want to put that in context on where Dave's going.
But so I got to know Jon pretty well then, and he was a sharp kid. And, when he went to Asbury, he actually came back and interned with us 2 summers.
Yeah, well, I interned in high school and in college. So I interned at DRM for probably 3 or 4 summers, something like that, and just spent a lot of time with those guys. I bought my first camera from them, used one that they weren't using, and yeah, I mean, just all kinds of connections to Dave and DRM.
So when did you
learn?
know?
What did you learn, Jon?
Oh man, I learned everything. It was actually a huge learning because I got to skip several classes at Asbury because they were too basic. Because Dave is awesome at teaching and bringing people in and under his wing and stuff like that. So
you were that douche in college. Like I
Totally.
already know
I
this.
think it's I think it's getting very deep in
skip,
here,
skip,
Jon.
skip.
But so Jon, did you know? So we talked about Dave doing photography when he was like 6 and 7. Did you have a similar experience when you were a kid, like getting introduced to this and knowing that this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so my mom had a Canon AE1 with a nifty 50, and so I got to play with photography from it. And, my dad bought that for her, and I don't know how much she used it, but it was sitting in that bag, and so I got to get it out and play with doing film and all kinds of stuff with that. And I was always a gearhead, so my dad was a stockbroker and financial planner at the time, and so we had computers in my house relatively very early age for, born in 83, but I was on an 86 back in the day, and, so always into gear and computers and ripping stuff apart, seeing how it worked and creating stuff. Yeah.
So you interned at DRM. Do you remember much about that? About those
definitely.
years? Do you remember thinking I want to work here someday?
Well, we got some great pictures because Dave took me at the age of 16 or 17 to NAB, which is in Las Vegas with the company. Got to go hang out there with them. So all kinds of good memories there.
We used to take the entire office to Vegas for that.
Every
to
year
look
for
at gear. That
the
was
National
before the
Association
internet.
broadcast.
It's big time. So we used it to do a lot of research, and Jon got to go. I'm not sure.
I got to go with them like 3 or 4 years in a row. It was awesome. It was so cool.
And you're like a teenage kid.
Teenage kid, yeah.
With these dudes in Vegas.
That was amazing.
That is pretty awesome. So after Asbury, you came back, worked at a couple churches, right, in Ohio, doing just like media production stuff.
Yeah, really
right?
very similar stuff at both. I worked up in Cleveland for a year and down at Crossroads in Mansfield for about 5 years doing video production, making shorts and stuff for announcements, doing lighting changes, sound production, all kinds of live work and ongoing production, computer work, website design, all of the above for a church, which transitioned really well into small business when you're kind of wearing a lot of hats and getting to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you kind of do everything when you own your own.
Totally.
In a small business like that. So tell me how it evolved to you working for DRM. Like, Dave, did you recruit him? Did a position come open and you were like, yes, I'm going to apply immediately because this is where I want to be?
I tried to hire him out of college, but he had a dream to work for churches. And I think this is me speaking, I think as he worked at the 2 churches that he did, he realized there's a whole lot of politics when it comes to church. And it's not... It's great to. I think it's actually better to be a volunteer than it is to be an employee. But
yep, absolutely. Or I do outside contract work for churches too, so it's easy to be on the outside and go in and
not
get a
something
new
I would
install going.
expect.
Yeah. So it was a big change, but yeah. So the first job that really started that transition was I had been doing a lot of programming for the Crossroads website at the time. And DRM was working hard on the Retriever digital signage, the very first incarnations of that. And we're stuck on a few spots. And I came in and started doing freelance programming with DRM at the time.
I tried to get him to come in then, too. No, I want to work here.
So, yeah.
But he wore you down eventually, apparently.
Oh, yeah. And I love it, yeah. It's been a blast.
So that means you've worked there for how long?
Just over 10 years.
Okay.
Oh, just about 10 years, something like that.
Wow, really?
Coming right up on 10 years.
Man, time flies, right, when you're having fun.
So Bob and I were looking for what are we going to do as we age to the point where we're going to retire and who's going to take it over. And, we had no kids that were interested. There were no. So it was either just let it go and we slowly phase it out, but I didn't see it that way, and we basically set it up so Jon and Jay were both an integral part of DRM at the time, and they also had some drive to be more than just an employee, I think. And we couldn't afford to pay them what they'd actually make in the marketplace, so we started giving them stock up to the point where they were quarter owners. And then about 5 years ago, we started looking at an exit strategy, and my partner, Bob, is about 5 years older than me. So he went first, and when his buyout was done, then the intention was for me to go. And that worked out to be about when I hit 65. So Jon and Jay, then own a quarter of the business, which now is a third of the business because it's just the three of us, and it'll eventually turn out to be the two of them.
Half and half. Yep.
Is that a scary thought?
Oh, a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
DRM's always been Dave. Well, and Dave and Bob, and now Dave. You know, and Dave was definitely my connection in, and you know, huge relationship. You know, going on. So that's definitely a scary transition, but we feel really good about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what drives you to want to own your own business as opposed to just be an employee?
That's a great question.
I think he's probably thinking the same thing I did at the time. I never thought I was going to own a business.
Yeah.
And you just sort of,
it was never the long-term
it just sort of
goal.
happened. You know, it's not it wasn't that I had this drive to be an entrepreneur. I saw a niche, and I said, this needs to happen. Let's make it work and do the business. And he's become part of that. I don't know if he'd go back and say, I don't know that I was coming in thinking I wanted to run a business, but
Dave and I have very similar personality in that if something needs done and we see it, we go do it. And so in the small business of DRM, when something needed done, you know, Dave would go do it or I'd go do it. And so eventually it got to the point where, you know, DRM couldn't really function well without like Jay or I or Dave. And so it kind of was a natural transition that way.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me, guys, what do you think makes DRM successful in like this area? Because I'm thinking about like video production and that kind of thing, and I think it's kind of surprising that Mansfield has a company like yours in Mansfield that, you know, functions as well as you do. So, you know, what do you think makes it successful?
I think a huge part of it is the drive to be part of the community and getting that level of involvement going. And one of our internal goals is to do a lot more nonprofit work once, you know, the Retriever gets going even further to the point where it sustains us, that we get to have our video production department, photography department, just doing nonprofit work and, you know, being part of that community. I think that commitment to that community makes it something where we're getting to be in front of it enough that we do get some other work that way that maybe wouldn't happen otherwise.
We have a big drive to help the nonprofits in town. I mean, obviously there's lots of small ones, but there's the big ones like Kingwood or the Renaissance, and we either do at a greatly reduced rate or a lot of times free, the Y, and we'd like to be able to do more of that. Although if I'm not there, I don't know why I say we.
It's hard to let that go, isn't it?
Sure.
I can't imagine Dave ever not coming in occasionally forever, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
Dave is DRM. Dave loves DRM. We love Dave, so, you know.
Is it hard to let go, though, Dave? Because, I mean, this is your baby.
Well, my wife and I have had this. I mean, I think I have a little anxiety about leaving. I have, you know, Jon asked me the other day, do I want to leave? I would say no. Do I need to leave? I think for their purposes, I think yes. And for my wife and for us as we get older, I mean, we want to have some years to do a few things.
Just enjoy yourselves.
When you run a business, I mean, if you ask my wife, she would say, I never took any time off, where I was, they were really short stints. And the only time she could really get me away is if we took a cruise somewhere, because then there was no, at the time, there was no
Right, yeah.
Forced
internet.
disconnection.
Forced disconnection. There
Which
was
is why I have a camper.
There were no cell
Off the
phones.
grid.
There was no internet. You
Uh-huh.
didn't know what's happening. Now I go on a cruise and I have to have the internet connection. And I'm checking my emails. And she doesn't like that. So there's going to certainly be things I miss. When I talk to people that have gone through this, they always say they miss the people. I'm going to miss the
Sure.
customers. I'm
Yeah.
going to miss the staff.
Because it is a big transition in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's another phase. You go that phase where you're in college. You go that phase when you get out of college. You're going to find a job. You go in that phase. You find a wife or a spouse, and then you go to that phase where you have kids, and then the kids are gone, and that's another phase. And now I'm in the last phase. I'm leaving, and then the next phase is in the ground.
Well, on that note, no, I'm kidding. Can you talk, though, a little bit about the importance to you of passing the torch and preparing these guys to be the ones who end up taking over?
Well, they both have done it without me pushing them. I'm happy that it can go on, that it's not going to stop, that the people that are employed there aren't going to be without a job because I'm leaving. It's all going to just flow. And if I was closing the doors and those guys that have been with me for so long, guys and gals, didn't have a job and were just done, I'd be going, oh, that's really sad. Why did I do it this way? Don't I have a better solution to keep them employed and still be able to do some things on my own? So,
Do you feel like it's in good hands?
oh yeah.
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 Yeah. Phew. So, John, then what do you envision as the future of DRM?
Future DRM, we've got a lot of eggs in our retriever basket. We're working hard on pushing that as a product out, and that is really where we want to see the drive of the business going.
We didn't talk about that part of the business. I mean,
The
it's
retriever.
one of the things that, and I don't know how much time we have here, but one of the things that
you have
happened.
as much time as you want. This is your swan song, Dave.
Oh, great. Oh. One of the things we didn't talk about, though, was the evolution of DRM. Maybe John hit on it a little bit, but we started out as a video production company. That was 100% of what we did. Well, maybe 90. We probably did some photography, but most of it was video.
Mm-hmm.
Then we grew into, because of the video, we started doing some animation work. Well, the animation work, we had a huge client that was having animation work done, and then he'd see a still of it, and he said, can I use that in a printed piece? So the next thing we're doing is we're doing graphic design and print. So and then from there, we started getting into web. But the one product that we came up on our own was the Retriever. It's a digital signage product that can go out and sit anywhere in any type of business, HR, sales, out in the, and it's a communication tool. It's a video communication tool.
We have it here at IdeaWorks.
Absolutely.
So,
And we started out reselling some other product, but it was awful to update. And so Jay started writing the code for version 1, and then Jon came in to help with some of that. But it's grown into around 30 to 35% of our business, and it's a recurring business model. So it helps keep the lights on when something else might be lower. But and we're trying to grow that. We've got them all over. We've got them in about 4 or 5 states, but we're doing some now inbound marketing that's going to bring it in from all over the country.
And we just shipped one to Maryland, first one in Maryland, so that was
Yeah.
fun.
wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting piece of the mix, and if we can grow that side to 60, 70% of the work, then that's the minute that you can start going, all right, now we can really focus on trying to help the community even more than we are. And
Well, I was going to say, it's like you said, at that time, it's like, well, then the video stuff is like the candy, You know, like
Yeah, you can pick your job.
Totally.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the fun stuff you get to do.
Yeah.
So
We get to
Yeah.
work with the clients we want to work with. And
That's
we get
right.
to do the
Yeah.
jobs that we want to do. And
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, let you guys be creative and
Totally.
branch
Yeah.
out a little more.
Because not every
Yeah.
video is fun.
What? I can't believe that. No, I'm
Hey.
kidding. You mean those like instructional videos that you do are
They pay a lot of bills, though.
exactly.
Although we've had a lot of fun ones too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, what's Dave, what's been one of your favorite projects that you've done over your tenure at DRM?
Well, Flymo was one of them.
Yeah.
These were all early on in terms of projects I never thought we'd ever do, but we produced a piece for Wendy's early on that was a sales piece to talk about their meat processing and where it's done. And the company that produces their meat at the time was out of Columbus, and they did almost all the meat processing for Wendy's east of the Mississippi. So our first shoot was in this huge, huge warehouse where they were bringing in tons of meat and they were grinding it up, making it into hamburger patties, and then freezing them. And it was the middle of the summer, but the inside of the warehouse was kept like at 30 degrees. It was freezing. Every time we take the camera outside, it would get fogged up. And then but that was a really interesting project, I suppose. But they're all fun in their own way.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a TV commercial down in Florida for Swan Hose that they wanted it done. It had to be done in Florida because it was the middle of the winter, and they wanted to show this guy that had a really good yard because he had a good Swan Hose that he was sprinkling his yard with, and the other neighbor had a crappy yard. And we actually found a company that goes out and spray paints yards green with a green fertilizer so that the one side, well, it's used for, believe it or not, golf courses when they are going to be on television, and they spray them with this fertilizer, and it sticks to the grass, makes it look greener than it actually is. So we went in and we had 1 yard sprayed with this, and then we put up a fence that went right down the center of it, and took some talent down from here and one that we hired in Columbus or in Florida, and that was a fun project. It was 2 days on location in the middle of the winter in Florida, so that was nice.
Awesome.
Not too shabby.
And the last one that really stands out was we had a company over in Canton, ARE Truck Caps, and their spokesperson was Charlie Daniels, the guy who sang "The Devil Went Down to Georgia."
Okay, yeah.
And he was their spokesperson, so we went down to his ranch in Tennessee and shot a commercial with him, recorded his audio, shot him putting the cap on his truck and driving around his ranch with the cap on and that kind of stuff. But that was a really fun job too. We got pictures at the office, everybody standing with the Charlie out of his back of his truck. So,
John, what's one thing you're looking forward to in this next phase for DRM?
oh boy.
Yeah.
There you go. I want to hear this one.
One thing
Not
I'm
seeing
really
Dave all
looking
the time.
No. Goodness. Well, we've already made a lot of these transitions, so I'm not sure on that front. But I mean, probably just the lack of any other accountability and the pressure of, here I am, that kind of thing. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
We've got Dave. We can always call Dave, I'm sure, but it's going to be different when we're not meeting with him every 2 weeks and it's just me and Jay and working it out and getting through it. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. So you're looking forward to having it all on your shoulders.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's going to be exciting.
That's a good attitude to have.
I think he deals with stress better.
So it would seem. Dave, what's one piece of advice that you would give these guys?
And they do this very well. Stay customer focused. So many people come in and they think they know better than what the customer wants. It's very easy to go in and produce a video piece where you say, okay, we're going to do this shot, this shot, this shot, and we need we never did that. We went into customers and said, okay, you want this? We're not going to interrupt your business to make this video. We'll work around you. We're not, I think a lot of video production companies go in and they got the big Hollywood director or whatever it is, and he's looking through his little piece of glass. And he says, okay, I'll stop this doing whatever. So I think just staying customer focused on all fronts, whether it's for retriever customers or video customers, but they're both doing it. They do a great job at that. But we as a company, I think, do a great job at that.
John, what would you say is the most significant thing you've learned from Dave?
Ooh, better have a good answer on this.
I think his personality dealing with people. He has this immediate way to warm you up to him. I mean, I sit across from him. I go in and meet new people with him, and I'm constantly amazed that by the end of that meeting, they're hugging and exchanging about, all these stories that just never would have come up with me, and he's got this personality that I've just learned to try to ask those, somewhat quirky questions sometimes, or something that just is going to create the relationship, So he's got this way of creating a relationship instead of it just being business. Mm-hmm. And that's huge. So that's a big one.
Dave, what are you looking forward to about going part-time? Or are you?
I think the thing that I'm probably, I have projects at home. I'm always busy. I'm either busy at the office or I'm busy at home doing some project or helping my daughter do something. I think the one thing that will probably, and I've heard this from other people, I have more than 2 days to get my stuff done. Yeah. I don't have to get it done in 2 days.
Yeah.
And then I might have 4 days, maybe, if I'm lucky.
Well, guys, now that we're all feeling really warm and fuzzy in this room, I'm going to wrap it up. Unless there's anything else, I think we've pretty much covered it. I think we've gotten really deep and explored our feelings. And and I think it feels like Dave is kind of being dragged into part-time kicking and screaming, but I think you're going to enjoy it. So do you think I hope you're feeling optimistic.
Oh, I'm feeling optimistic and sad. And
yeah.
Next year will be interesting.
Yes.
It will be interesting. But I am staying on for several of our, my best clients and keep them.
And going back to what he loves, like the photography and the videography.
Yeah.
He gets to go out on the shoots.
That's kind of, you get to do more of the fun stuff, right?
Yeah,
instead of worrying about running the business.
Yes, so. That's very true. And I'll also have more time to do photography the way I want to do it. I can go out on my days off and go, okay, I'm going to go down to Mohican. I'm going to take a little hike and shoot some pictures today, instead of everything being work related.
Is there a time that you guys are officially going to be making this transition, or is it kind of happening now and happening slow? Or
right now it's scheduled to happen January 1. I'll be going part-time.
All right.
And they'll become,
the end of this year. It's coming.
They'll become,
the countdown is on.
That's right. They'll become, the two of them will become 50% owners in the company at that point.
All right.
And I have to,
one midnight.
One fell swoop.
It all changes.
then I have to listen to them tell me what to do.
Can I change my answer? That's what I'm looking forward to most. I want to go back.
Yep. Well, guys, I think that it's going to be great for you both. I think, Dave, you're going to enjoy more time off. John, good luck. And I mean that sincerely, not in a sarcastic way.
Good luck.
Yep.
I appreciate it. No.
Yep. Good things are coming for DRM. So for everyone listening, how can people find out more information about DRM?
Yeah, so the website is drminc.com, drminc.com, and then Retriever has its own at retrieverdigitalsignage.com.
Retrieverdigitalsignage.com.
You got to spell it RETRIE. because it's
Oh, no,
I
we
after.
have all the variations.
That's true. We do have them for
You've owned them
misspellings.
all.
But remember, it's I before E unless it's after C.
Well, guys, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I've had a lot of fun. I've enjoyed having you on. I hope you've had fun too. So,
It's been fun. Thank you very much for having us.
absolutely.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
of course, everyone listening, if you want to listen to more Why the Hell Am I Here, you can find us on RussianSource.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.
Why the hell was it?